It was at this point, actually, in the stand-up that I wrote the note. Being funny in person and doing stand-up are two different things.
Long rambling stories that she seems nervous delivering.
It wasn't hitting with the audience.
You think he's going to smite me, Jeff? You think God's going to smite me?
High five.
The transition from Shrinky Dinks to cancer gave me whiplash.
That was painful. All right, welcome everyone. My name is Jeff Klein. I'm a stand-up comic, and I am a beige gay, which means technically I'm gay, so I get to say all the horrible things we're going to say. But you know what? I'm not great at it.
You're not great at a lot of things. My name's Steve Miller. I'm also a stand-up comedian. I work with Jeff a lot, and I'm what's known as apparently a rainbow straight, because although I'm straight, I'm certainly a lot more flamboyant than Jeff is, with his uncork and unwind, really living that suburban mom 40s soccer lifestyle right in the background. But who am I to judge or say anything? I'm recording this in my bedroom with a giant white wall behind me. So we're both stand-up comedians based in Tampa, Florida. We're in the beginning stages of starting a podcast together. And Jeffrey came across something. You're thinking you may pull out.
Well, I'm just saying it's exploratory.
Okay. Well, I think nice. I thought we were fully committed to this thing, but I see you backed out. Interesting. So while we were talking about content and segments for the podcast in general, I came across an article in Entertainment Weekly about two of our favorite things, drag queens and stand-up comics, and I sent it to Jeff.
And we got excited. They're drag queens from RuPaul's Drag Race, which we are both fans. These queens are going to be doing stand-up comedy, which we both do proficiently, I will say. And what better use of our time than to watch their stand-up and give our opinions on it?
Absolutely. And because I'm so good at social media and content in general, I said to Jeff, we could just do this sometime after we get the podcast up and going. And Jeff, what was your response to that when I tried to delay this?
So the first one came out this past weekend, and I sent it to you, said, should we watch this? And you said, yeah, we don't need to do it right away. And I believe my response was, sure, we can absolutely wait until it's not relevant anymore and then talk about it.
That's the level of understanding of social media on my part.
We also do recognize, by the way, in our judgment that we're going to pass, this is purely based on their stand-up. We're excited because we know them from Drag Race and we appreciate them as drag queens, but we love comedy, we love stand-up, we love the joke. And so, whereas in a world where drag queens are being judged too much right now, we recognize that they probably don't need to be judged by a bad gay and a horrible straight. But we're going to do it anyway.
We're absolutely going to do it. And I appreciate you saying that, Jeff, because the truth is it's an art form that's under attack for no justifiable reason at all. It's absolutely ludicrous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for drag queens, for drag performers, drag kings as well. And this goes back to the time when I was like 16, 17 years old. I started sneaking into a club here in Tampa, in Ybor City, called Tracks. A little underage. We faked the hand stamps to get in. And the drag queens there, Epiphany and Joey Brooks, and there was others. I don't remember all their names now. But they were like the life of the party. They were the center of it. And I just, from that moment on, I was like, those are like some of the coolest people in the world when you're in this massive club and they're controlling, what in my mind, coming from a 16, 17-year-old suburban kid, this massive club, they're the center of the party. So I have nothing but respect for what they do. And this is not, this is not to slight the art form or the performers in general. We're just going to straight up talk about the content of stand-up comedy, because who knows? I mean, the reality is these are some funny human beings. And these specials, they could be good, Jeff. They could be.
Well, we got excited about that. And speaking of RuPaul's Drag Race, I do want to make it clear, and I feel like I should qualify. I think people tuning in that may not know you or I immediately are going to be impressed that I'm on a video with Mistress when she's in the top 4. But that's not the case. You just love drag so much that you have embodied one of the top 4 contestants on season 15 of RuPaul's Drag Race. And that is a commitment to a cause that I appreciate.
You know, I'll say this about Mistress. She's clearly in her Steve Miller era.
Yeah, that she is. All right, so let's get into Darienne Lake Altered Boys, and I want to start with the positive. I want to start with the funniest bit, the absolute most positive, and that is remembering when she was on RuPaul's Drag Race. Do you remember that? And
Sure.
she did the reading challenge, and when I watched that back, because after I watched the special, I had to watch that again just to see her say something funny. But what I liked was she, in the reading challenge, I realized almost all of her reads could be used for you were a library to be open.
Ben de la Creme, you remind me of a Russian doll, full of yourself. Adore Delano, I'm going to say this very slowly so you can understand. You're dumb.
She won the reading challenge.
And justifiably so.
And yet, we get to the special. And here, I had very high hopes on this special. Let's start with initial impressions from me. She walked out, very big stage, beautiful setup on the stage, very big stage. I did like she had an opening line. She wanted to welcome all, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, gays, and days. She looked gorgeous. She looked cinched.
She looked beautiful. She looked fantastic.
She's lost some weight since she was on RuPaul season 9, I want to say. She looked great. I thought it was a lot of mascara. Huh?
6, I think.
Oh, 6. I thought it was a lot of mascara, a little bit too much because you could barely see her eyes, and that was maybe it was like too many lashes on. I'm a bad gay. I don't know how all the drag works, and I don't know if it was me, but I could constantly see the wig glue line, and that bothered me a little bit. I don't know if it was sweat or if it was just there was this line right here. I didn't like it.
I did not clock that. I did not notice it. I am going to really ding you for points here for telling a drag queen that they're wearing too much makeup. That's just really unbelievable.
I want to see her
blown away by that.
If you're doing stand-up and you're doing expressive stand-up, which is what I will call this, there were a fair amount of act-outs, you're going to need to sell it in the eyes. And if I can't see what your eyes are doing, that's a hindrance right there. That's
a valid complaint. I still think you're wrong, but it's valid. Your emotions are valid, Jeff. Your emotions are valid. They're yours. You're seen. I respect you. I'm going to mirror most of what you said for initial. I was also sort of blown away. I didn't realize that Comedy Dynamics was doing this. Comedy Dynamics is obviously a great comedy promotion company. Yeah. And then I was equally interested to see that the director for these is Brian Volk Weiss. Do you know him, Jeff?
I know the name, but I couldn't think of where, and I was too lazy to look it up.
Yeah, so he's actually directing in addition to Darienne's stand-up. He's also doing the Ginger Minges, Peppermint, and he did Miss Crackers. He's also done he's worked with Gary Owen, Dan Cummings, Mikey Winfield, Bill Bellamy, Arsenio Hall. He's worked with some really big names in stand-up, and then he was a producer on Ali Wong's Baby Cobra special. So this dude's been doing stand-up been producing and directing stand-up for a long time. He's worked with some really big names within the stand-up universe, and I think that, I don't know if Comedy Dynamics put these people, I don't know, who knows how it all came together, but they got the right person for the job, which is the whole reason why I was so let down by the entirety of this as a special. Because the team is there, she looks great, the stage looks great, the production is great, and the people that are around her are veterans of stand-up comedy production. And
everything about this was sold as a comedy special, a stand-up comedy special. It was said, it was in the description, it was in the article. All the people that do it are doing comedy stand-up specials. And every expectation was for a comedy stand-up special. And, not to go, too much inside baseball or behind the curtain on this, but I don't think this was a one-take show. I think this was multiple takes. I think you can tell that by kind of seeing when she's drinking out of that glass of Coke, it varies in levels up and down. And that's a sure sign that this is shot over, because anytime you do a comedy special, for people that don't know, a little behind the curtain is the fact you don't want to do it in one take. That's ridiculous. It's silly to even think that. You want to do at least two shows, and then those get cut together into an hour special. Ideally, you have two great shows and they have too much material to use, but you're getting the best of this joke worked great here, this audience, this joke hit great. It's a smart thing to do, and I would put money on that's how this was done. Again, run like a comedy special should be run. Or do we want to get into material now? Are we ready to get into some of the?
Yeah, look, we've said everything nice that we can say because there's nothing nice to say about the material. I happen to be a very big Darienne Lake fan, and I was really disappointed. The entirety of the set, and we can talk specifics, but the entirety of the set, she seemed very uncomfortable. She didn't seem confident, and there's so many of these little ticks that we do as young comics. And believe me, I've looked at enough tape of myself to know that I've done them as well. There's a lot of tugging on the outfit. There's a lot of adjusting of the bosoms. There's a lot of fidgeting around, like you said. Yes, exactly. And all that belies a confidence, and I can't say enough of the importance of word economy. Brevity is the soul of wit, right? And she, by the way, there is quality stuff here. Like there
100%.
really is real good stuff here that if she, and I don't know how long she's been doing stand-up, but if she took the time to work it, she could build something great because she's obviously a great performer and a great storyteller, but boy.
So I took notes literally going through it. So every time something popped in my head, I wrote it down. So mine is in question. I don't know if that was a real word, but
it's not.
I thought that, so overall impression, I thought the same thing. I thought she reminded me of what people don't know is when stand-up comics have their hour, it is very rare to near never that a stand-up comic solely on an island by themselves has done this hour. It's near never that a comic hasn't gotten a tag from a friend, another comic they respect has suggested something on a different structure on that joke, and they have run it in front of their friends and other audience members before it ever makes it to a special. The feeling on this was Darienne created all of this and didn't run it past comics and ran it past maybe yes people and then put it on stage. And it also felt a little bit due to the confidence issues that you noticed that possibly this had hit at different points in different moments. I'm sure this was tested material, but then for whatever reason on this night, it wasn't hitting with the audience. And we all know when a joke that's supposed to hit doesn't hit. When you go into the next one, you're going in with less confidence. And sometimes if that joke doesn't get the laugh you thought, you'll add another tag or another line at the end of it that you don't need, but because you're thinking maybe this will laugh and I will laugh at us together. But what's happening is you didn't get the laugh you wanted and you're losing confidence. And that felt a lot in this special of losing confidence, which was sad. Because again, as we agree, Darienne is funny.
Oh, absolutely. And see, I didn't notice. So one thing, I also watched this very stoned because it's a comedy special. And there were times where I had to back it up and go, I must have missed something, but I didn't. I didn't miss anything. It just was, we're transitioning out of this bit. But yes, that was what I was going to say was you were mentioning that you think that this was done over multiple takes. And I do think that is possible. I didn't notice the soda. And yes, that's how it's always done. Or not always. That's how it's traditionally done. That being said, this reeked to me of one take because the crowd, I cannot believe that nothing got sweetened. I can't believe they didn't put any laugh track in there. I can't believe they didn't boost the laughs that were there, that they didn't tighten up the dead spots because it was awkward. And I think a big part of that too is, and now look, I'm an overweight comic. I'm an overweight human being. Fuck being an overweight comic. I'm a fat person, right? And I talk about that in my set, and I typically start talking about it. Start my sets with talking about that, and then move into other stuff.
Most of my set is about you being fat as well, so that's funny. We both talk about that. When you're ready, I'm ready to get into the first joke that I had a problem with.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm ready.
My first issue that I saw her starting to bail was she made a quick political offhand joke. And I think it's one of those things, as liberals, this is a type of throwaway joke we do in conservative rooms to get the laugh.
Yes.
And it hits very hard. But then when you do it in a liberal room, it doesn't. And you have this like, well, why didn't that hit? And it's because you're doing it in a majority gay room. So she did a slight dig on Joe Biden, and the room wasn't there for it.
It was one in a long series of cheap jokes, because I believe it was in reference to gas prices and gassing up the car. So first of all, that time's already gone past us. Gas prices have come down, you know, and then secondly, it's an easy joke. It's a whatever, you know. Oh, gas prices are right. Thanks a lot, Biden. And that was, to me, like a running theme. It's that it was the same as the why did the gay guy go to church? Because heard there was a guy there hung like this, which is just a street joke that has been around forever.
Jokes,
yeah. So, and what I was saying before, by the way, as far as self-deprecating humor, I think the difficulty, and not to derail where we're at, and I apologize for that, the difficulty with somebody like Darienne Lake relying so much on self-deprecating humor is the crowd likes her. The crowd loves her. They're there to see her. And they'll laugh a couple times about you saying, oh, I'm fat. Oh, I'm fat. Okay. But it got to a point where it's like she's beating up on herself, and she hated, it felt like she just hated herself. And so I think that the crowd's like, no, we love you, Darienne. Like, well, I don't want to laugh at that with you.
And I think one of the problems is, especially in season 6, Darienne is a bigger guy. Yes. But on that special, he's a curvy woman and looked fantastic.
Yeah.
I would not call her fat in that special at all. But, I would say that it's a big stage to make her look smaller. Yes, because that is shade. But I would not call her fat. That'd be rude. But no, I thought she looked great. And the problem is you did a lot of effort to look really good. And then all of a sudden, I don't know why I left my messaging on, and I'm going to get dings. I apologize. And all of a sudden you're being self-deprecating and people aren't going to respond. That's exactly, you make a good point on that. Yeah.
I always do. And we'll talk about it as we get towards the end of the special, but what she does at the end of the special undercuts everything she did leading up to that moment.
Yes.
She talks about the positive health journey that she's been on and how much weight she's lost and how great she feels and, strong and flexible. And these are amazing things, but all it does is it undercuts everything she talked about.
And I will give credit where credit is due. And this is where I feel like she should have talked to more stand-up comics. She had a line where she says, I'm in the fitness protection program. And I don't remember what went past that, but she started it with, I'm in the fitness protection program. And I immediately wrote down the fact that fitness protection program is a great punchline, but she used it as a setup. She gave away the laugh at the beginning. And then she finished that sentence with something much weaker. But if she had just done that same exact joke to starting it with, I don't do this, I don't do this, I'm in the fitness protection program, that's the joke. And she gave the joke away. There was a lot of that, I think, in it as well, where there was clever writing, but she's giving the joke away.
Yeah, and that is just a lack of experience, and that's a lack of honing it and editing it,
right,
and working it. And you see it in a bunch of different spots. Like she does and by the way, I keep confusing the gender between she and he, and no offense is meant by that. I'm doing my best. And but she does that bit about Jared from Subway, and she says 3 times in 3 different ways, do you remember Jared from Subway? Yes. Do you remember that guy? Do you remember that guy Jared from Subway? You remember Jared from Subway? It's like, oh, no.
Well, first of all, we both hate rhetorical questions in comedy. They don't belong on stage. A rhetorical, just tell us what you want to tell us. Asking the audience a rhetorical question is the way to derail your set. Just tell us what you want to sell. I wrote down about the Jared and Subway. My other issue with that was she did that joke, and then she went from that she said that the joke about Subway and kids underage. She said boys, although technically, to keep facts straight, Jared was molesting young girls. Fine line to put, but let's just put it where it is. Also, she then finished that with another joke about she likes her guys like blackjack, under 21. And then hit. She likes to be hit. And then here was my problem. She moved on. And my problem with that was like, but you're kidding, right? But you're kidding? But you're kidding, right? Because I feel like when you touch on subjects like that, especially like that, there needs to be an out of that chunk at some point, right? Like you're making this bit and it's this, and we're talking about this and it's funny, and there's the bit going, but then, but clearly I don't sleep with young boys. Like there needs to be an out on that. And she didn't give us
make it okay for me to laugh at your perversion.
Right. And now I'm left
with a joke, I should say.
Yeah, and now I'm left with like, but you were joking, right?
And I did mention that I was pretty stoned watching this, so I have a lot of notes written down here, and sometimes the notes don't make sense. But we're right around that point where we're talking about Jared. I have the note from Jared from Subway. She said it 3 times, and then my next note is it's like listening to a joke book. And that is how I felt around this point where I'm like, there's like this balance where she does these stories that are half formed. Right? So they're great premises. They could be great. And then she bails on them too early, doesn't build it out. And then she rapid fires a bunch of street jokes in there and then moves on to the next bit.
It was at this point, actually, in the stand-up that I wrote the note, being funny in person and doing stand-up are 2 different things.
Yes.
And this is where I think people don't realize, like, Darienne Lake is a very funny person, very off-the-cuff, funny, very smart on comedy. But being smart on comedy, being off the cuff, being all of those are important for stand-up, but also is structure and writing, and all of that is what makes stand-up hard.
Yeah, it's also still a theatrical performance. My brain started getting hung up on theatrical because I wasn't sure if that's the right word or not. Theatrical, but it is like you're running material and you're honing it and you're writing it and you're re-editing it, and I bet Darienne is an amazing host at events, whether it's a drag brunch or a roast or anything like that, where she's playing with the crowd and hosting something. I bet she fucking kills it.
I would pay.
That's also not the same as stand-up.
Yeah, I would pay to go see Darienne do any of that, 100%. Also, at this point, and I don't know if you thought this, but I very much felt this way. She made a couple of jokes and a couple of references, and I will be honest, I thought she was a little dismissive of the trans community.
Yeah.
I think the line that bothered me was, what was it? It was something about there are, there's gay people, there's straight people, there's some people that I don't know, I guess just feel like God went oops on. And that is what felt dismissive to me of the trans community. Like God just went, oops, I put you in the wrong body, or whatever, is how she put it, I think. And then she goes on to say that she's very proud to be a boy who dresses as a woman. She's like, and I get the delineation. And I think people may, in middle America, blur the difference between a drag queen and a transgender person. And there's a difference in that. That's what it felt a little off for me. I do have another compliment for her, though. There was another
already?
joke. I know. Well, already, yeah. There was another joke I found that I thought could have been. This is one of those great lines that could have been funny if it's just rewritten a little bit. But it's the line that says, "I'm a blouse because I'm a soft top." I thought that's a great line.
It is.
The other thing I definitely want to mention was the super relatable wrestling demonstration on stage that was painful. How many times did she ask the audience if they've wrestled in high school? Again, 6-7 times with no response.
Yeah, and then she brings the dude on stage and says, "Do you remember wrestling in high school?" And he's like, "No." then she's like, well, hopefully I can jog your memory. It's like, he doesn't remember it because he didn't do it, Darienne. Like, it's not like you're not going to jog his memory. He doesn't. And then, yeah, that whole thing was really brutal to watch. And then I was so disappointed that it just ended, right?
There was no punchline.
It just ended. Okay, goodbye. Get off the stage. And I was like, you brought somebody up on stage. There needs to be a payoff. There has to be a payoff.
Zero punchline at the end. No payoff. It bothered. It was no reason for it. I mean, something that elaborate, bringing somebody on stage, you have to have a big end to that. And it was just like, it was literally like she just tricked with him, and she came and she's like, I'm done.
I don't know if it's literally like that, but yeah. Okay.
Literally like that. I do want to give, towards the end, there was another shout out of a good joke, actually. One of the best jokes, I thought. Political. We did get political again. But she did a good misdirection joke, hit it with a punchline, where she said she came up through the 80s, blah, 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 80s, blah, 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 80s. There was a cancer affecting the community in the 80s.
I don't know if everybody remembers the 80s and coming out as gay, but I'll inform you that there was a cancer that was going around, sort of destroying the gay community. It was called the Reagans.
Well, that's a great bit. And again, it's another great example of her leaving that too soon.
Yes.
Like, so she did go into Nancy Reagan being the throat goat, which is an amazing, true thing. Like, you have a great joke about LBJ, which hurts me to say that you have a great joke. We have a great joke about LBJ. And I was like, okay, here we go. Like, this is a chance to dig in to some social critiques, some social commentary about things that she went through, underneath this regime of, with lacked any sort of humanity or empathy or concern, for a portion of the population that they helped govern. And yeah, so I was like, and then she got into Nancy Reagan, and I was like, oh, we're going to build something. And just sort of, it was almost like a statement of facts.
And the thing that killed me is, like, when she would get into her one-person show type scenarios, where she was in her storytelling era,
which, by the way, is what she should be doing. She should do a one-person show, not a stand-up special.
100%. Her growth as being kicked out of the house, finding her family in the drag community, all of that was fantastic. And then her story, her parable, her Aesop's fable at the end about looking at the life of and the physics of a bumblebee, and knowing that they shouldn't be able to do it, but they can. What I loved about that was it tied in the big girl stuff she talked about earlier. It tied in the struggle, and it tied in her being able to do it. What I didn't like was she got very murky in all of that. And we also included this this eyelash thing that you've been doing. And so, like, that story had just happened. And I feel like the culmination was a lot of these stories right at the end, and then we muddled them all together to make an analogy with all of them, as opposed to if those had been sprinkled through, and then at the very end you tied everything up in a thing. Well, you don't forget to bring your eyelash and be a bumblebee. At these, that would have been a great, like, oh, we all came together in the end, and it brought the whole thing together, as opposed to here's the last 2 minutes all brought together in a mishmash.
Yeah, agreed. And it's like, my note at that point is, we've stopped telling jokes and we're just telling stories now, I think is what it says, which is fine, because I like that. It says jokes have stopped, just nervous storytelling from around the time of her leaving home. So that, but all that portion of it, the second half was loaded with potential and possibility,
right.
And she, I don't know if either she made a choice not to in the moment, but there were none of those one-liners sprinkled throughout, which I didn't like anyways, so whatever. But there was no more attempt at a stand-up show from the sense of, laughs throughout. Not that I'm a big laugh per minute guy, which I just hate. I hate that shit. I understand the importance of and the craft, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But she had, it's like, this should be a one-woman show or a one-person show, whatever.
But I think, and there's still a way to do that to make it comedy. I mean, I think, unfortunately, as a great example, I think Hannah Gadsby's Nanette gets way too much flack for being a one-person show and not being a comedy special. But the fact is, she did a one-person show that was tagged up fully in every story with jokes, with punchlines, with setup and punchlines, while telling the stories that she told. And I think Darienne has a great opportunity to do that if she ever did this again, but it would be tell your story first, then go back through that story and punch up the jokes where you can in your story. Where does this get a laugh? Can I get a laugh here? To tell your story, as opposed to what we spent $4.99 a piece to do and watch this.
Much like this conversation we're having, it's all over the board. It's a bit of a mess. There's not enough structure or process. But this is a conversation. This is a conversation.
Finishing thoughts on Darienne Lake, Altered Boy. How would you rate it? How are we rating it? We should come up with a rating system. How are we rating it?
Want to do scale of 1 to 10?
1 to 10. 10 being the best?
Yeah.
Okay, 10 being the best. Final thoughts on it? Rate it.
My final thoughts on it is that it was rushed to market, he says. Is that it was rushed to market, that it's full of good ideas, full of good premises, but really sort of fell apart. I'm disappointed. I'm still a big fan of hers, but I wouldn't watch this. I'd definitely go see her perform sometime, certainly not stand up. And on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd go 3.
I mean, I feel a lot of the same way. I feel missing a lot of structure. Looked amazing, which made some of the self-deprecating jokes harder to land because of how great she looked. I think production value was great. I think looked good. I loved the interesting tidbits I learned about Darienne Lake on it, and I wish we had more of those. And I wish everything could have been just wrapped up to be funnier. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 10. I truly hated it. And I really, really like Darienne Lake. I honestly do. So the next special coming out is Peppermints. Peppermint special is going to be So Psy, the T effect, capital on Psy.
Yeah, it's not. Don't like the name.
Premiere date's going to be April 18th, so we'll put out one of these on the week following. We'll watch it the weekend that it comes out. So we're looking forward to seeing that one and giving our thoughts. This is one of 6. We're going to keep doing these. Maybe they're ramping up. Maybe they're ramping up to end with the absolute best, which is probably the case because the last one's Jinx. But
yeah, that's absolutely going to be the best. Jinx will absolutely crush and destroy. She's unbelievably funny, unbelievably talented.
I have high hopes on every single one of these, though.
Please, God, don't let all these feel like a cash grab and like the longest open mic I've ever been to.
Okay, I don't know if God's really listening on this one, but it's worth a shot.
You think he's going to smite me? You think he's going to smite me, Jeff? You think God's going to smite me? God's going to smite me. God, Jesus. Watch the special and you'll know.
Feel free to follow Steve Miller on his social. Lord knows he needs it. Follow me on mine. My name's Jeff Klein. Come see us if you're in the area. We're doing shows all the time, and see if we know anything that we're talking about when it comes to stand-up, because how dare we judge other people?
We dare. We go where eagles dare. Caw, caw.
We're ending it with the call.